Okay, it's time for skeletal system parts and functions. Are you ready? Let's get to it. So what are the parts of the skeletal system? Well, first of all, bones. There are 206 bones in an adult human body. Ligaments. Ligaments connect bone to bone. Cartilage. Cartilage covers the ends of bones. It reduces friction at joints. We also have cartilage in some other places, like in our ears and our nose. And the skeletal system also includes joints, and those are places where our bones meet. We have lots of those. So what are the four main parts of the skeletal system? Do you remember? Think. Bones, joints, ligaments, and cartilage. All right. Did you know that babies are born with over 300 bones? And as we grow, many of those bones fuse together. A lot of them are in our skull, but they're in lots of other places as well. Think about that number. And that's how we end up with 206 in adults. But we start with much more. So your bones, all 206 of them, are living, growing tissue. They form a head to toe supportive framework for your body. So let's talk about those functions. So one function of the skeletal system is support. So it's structural support for our body. So we're not just like a mushy pool of goo, okay? It also provides a framework for attachment of tissues, muscles. Muscles attach to our bones, but so do lots of other tissues as well. All right, so let's keep going. What is another function of the skeletal system? Well, storage. So we have a reserve of calcium salts stored in our bone. So fun fact, if you don't eat enough calcium, your body will start breaking down some bone to get the calcium. So it's important to get enough calcium in your diet so you don't start breaking down your bone to get it. Also lipids, so that's fat, is stored in yellow marrow. So that's really what gives yellow marrow its yellow color. It's fat. What else? Well, we have blood cell production or hematopoiesis. Hematopoiesis. That means the formed elements of blood. So red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, they're formed inside red marrow. So think about red blood, red marrow forms blood cells. Also platelets. Platelets aren't cells, but they're the formed elements of blood. Yellow marrow stores fat. So that was on the previous slide. So red marrow, hematopoiesis, blood cell formation, the formed elements of blood. Red blood cells, erythrocytes. White blood cells, leukocytes. Platelets, thrombocytes. All right, what else? Well, protection. So think about it. This is probably what a lot of people think of first with the skeletal system, but our ribs protect our heart and lungs, our skull or cranium protects our brain, our vertebrae protect our spinal cord, and our pelvis also serves to protect some digestive and reproductive organs. So protection. What else? Well, leverage. So our bones allow the muscles to create some movement and change direction and magnitude of forces. So important for movement. So what are the major functions of the skeletal system? Do you remember? Support, storage, remember fat and calcium for an example, hematopoiesis, protection, and leverage. So how do bones provide protection? So that's one of the functions, but how do our bones provide protection? Well, remember we have our cranium, our ribs, our pelvis, our vertebrae. They all provide protection of the organs and tissues they surround. Red blood cells are produced in the skeletal system. Is that true or false? It's true. Hematopoiesis occurs in red marrow. It is part of the skeletal system. All right, so now we have two main types of bone tissue. We have spongy bone and we have compact bone. So let's look at them. First, we have spongy bone. So think about what a sponge looks like, all those pores, those openings. Spongy bone or cancellous bone is also full of those holes. Where is it located? Well, the epiphysis means the end of long bones. Also in areas where there's lower stress or where the stress could come from a multitude of directions. It's lighter than compact bone. So it reduces the weight of our skeleton so that we're not lugging around big, giant, heavy bones. So we actually are able to move. And it has a trabecular network. So sometimes it's even called trabecular bone. And that's that all those little holes and grooves you see. And inside those little holes and grooves is red marrow. So that trabecular network supports and protects the cells of the red bone marrow. Why? Because they're important for hematopoiesis. We need to replace our blood cells. So they need a special network to protect. So here you can see, look at that trabecular network of spongy bone. Great protection. Cancellous bone, spongy bone, trabecular bone. Protects red marrow, and you can see it is found at the ends, epiphysis, of a long bone. Okay, so compact bone. Compact bone is located in the diaphysis or the shaft of long bones and in areas where the stress comes from limited directions. So it tends to be in one or two directions. It is much heavier than spongy bone. It gives strength to our skeleton. It is able to withstand a great deal of force, much more than spongy bone. It provides support and protection as a result. And it covers all of our bone surfaces except inside joint capsules. So even spongy bone at the ends, it needs to be protected by compact bone. So except for the ends, which are covered by cartilage in joint capsules, compact bone is going to be everywhere. So here you can see spongy bone is still protected by compact bone, okay? And it is found, there's no spongy bone in the diaphysis, the shafts, but you can see even in the epiphysis, the ends, we do have some compact bone to protect that spongy bone. All right, so what type of bone tissue is found on the superficial surface of a long bone? It's compact bone. All right, now there are two types of bone marrow. We have red marrow and we have yellow. So red marrow, if you remember, is responsible for hematopoiesis, producing those formed blood elements, red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. And the location is the epiphysis, or the ends of long bones in adults. Yellow marrow, on the other hand, it functions as fat storage, and the location is in a medullary cavity in the diaphysis of the long bone in adults. But here's something that's interesting. Bone marrow changes. We're born with all red marrow. As we age, the red marrow is converted to yellow. Okay, so here you can see from infancy through adulthood, we convert our red marrow over time to primarily yellow marrow, storage of fat. If you think about it, it makes sense. In your first year, you will triple in size. That's going to mean creating a lot of new blood formed elements like red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets, so we need it. So here's something that's interesting. If you suffer a great deal of blood loss as an adult, so in a severe accident or injury, your body will temporarily convert yellow marrow to red marrow so that you can replace that blood more quickly, okay? So normally in an adult, where are we going to find red marrow? In the axial skeleton and at the very ends of the long bones that are closest to the axial skeleton. And our last topic is sinuses. So what are sinuses? Well, sinuses are hollow portions of our bones. You can see where they are in these pictures. They surround our nasal cavity. So here, here, here. What are their functions? Well, it lightens our skull so we don't have a big old clunky head to carry around. It also amplifies our voice, so it makes it louder, and adds some resonance to our voice, so the intensity or quality of the tone of our voice. It's why when you're sick, your voice sounds weird, especially if you have some, excess mucus in your sinuses, because it changes the resonance of your voice. So what is a function of sinuses? Lightens your skull, amplifies your voice, and adds resonance to your voice. You can see the location of where they are in your skull. And there you have it. That's an overview of the skeletal system, the parts and functions. So I hope you learned something new today.